And here we are. And things are looking good so far. And here we are. Welcome to the Sunday Brunch Bunch. It's episode 25. And we are up to the year 1998 in music. So we'll see if some of our regular contributors will start showing up. And in the meantime, it was record store day, which was not a huge, big deal for me because there was really only one thing that I wanted from record store day. And when I went to I didn't stand in line, before the store opened. I didn't, I just, I didn't show up until I think it was afternoon, not quite 1 o'clock. And the only item that I went to the record store to see if they still had some copies left, and they did, was the Eric Burden and War box set. Really nice. I've listened to one of the records so far. There's 2 single albums and 1 double album. And just really nicely put together. And now I have the War box set, which was a record store release. Was it last year or 2 years ago? No, I can't remember. Time is such a blur. And then now I have the Eric Burden and War in my collection. So I'm really, really happy about that. Hey, Stunty, nice to see you. I know you probably have some items for 1998 because I'm pretty skint on that. I have 2 records. That's it. And I was, and I'll put the invite out there here, and I sure hope you have that Coil release from 1998. I'm going back through my list here to see what it was. Yeah, Time Machines. Have no idea if that's any good, but I'm sure that, okay, good. Indeed, you have that. I have been gradually adding to my Coil collection. I recently picked up Aphex Twin, that debut quasi compilation of material from like the late 80s, early 90s. At least that's kind of how I read whatever. And I've really, really liked that. That has been super great. And there is the man, the legend with a red hat. Boy, he's looking kind of lumberjacky today, huh?
Well, it is winter here, huh? So
I got to turn my volume up. I didn't realize I had it down so low. But yeah, we're the fall has been pretty mild around here. This is the first cloudy day in a few days here in Chicago. Yeah. So hasn't been too bad. Very mild weather.
That Time Machines album from Coil, which is actually a project called Time Machines rather than Coil. It's
right.
Presents.
I was reading a little bit about it. Yeah.
It's actual time machines. It's 4 time machines. Each track is supposed to take you to a certain place back or forth in time.
Huh.
And it's every track, every side is dedicated to a specific synthesis drug. It's a pretty stark psychedelic album. It's super intense and quite quite dark in a way, but not just that. It's super drony but stark.
Yeah, all right. So, and it's a double album or a single?
Yeah, wait. Here it is, the original, because it's got reissued. Oh, okay. So, yeah.
Nice.
And all the tracks, as you can maybe see.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very long tracks.
Yeah, because it's the name of, like you got methoxybicarboline, which is also called telepathine, 2.5 dimetoxy 4-ethyl amphetamine, DOET hecat, 5-methoxy N-dimethyl, DMT basically. So one is hecat, one is DMT, one is telepathine, and one is psilocybin.
Now, DMT is something that I haven't heard mentioned in quite a long time. I am very familiar with it, but that's something that people don't talk about much anymore.
Well, DMT is still quite popular, I think. But it's the thing is that I've never taken any, but like I know a lot of people who do that. The thing is that it smells quite bad, doesn't it? Right?
I don't. No, I haven't used it myself either. I just I know
DMT is a mix of herbs. It's a natural drug, psychedelic drug,
right.
and yeah. It's a powder of herbs, basically.
Yeah, and as I can't remember, maybe it's STP, but one of them, either DMT or STP, is like a 3 or 4 day trip. It's that intense. So I just remember reading about that from the Merry Pranksters.
And the Time Machines album was original project of Drew McDowell, who was one of the 3 main members of Coil besides John and Peter. And that was his last project with Coil. After that, he left them. I think he left for the US. And there was in the 2000s a Time Machines 2, Volume 2, that was supposed to come out. Eventually, it came out after the death of Peter, I think, as a USB stick release. I've never heard it, but or maybe I've listened to it and it didn't do it for me. But the Time Machines one is
Yeah, they're not easy. I know they've been reissuing many of their earlier catalog, and that's how I picked up the ones that I have managed to get. And
this just got reissued.
Yeah, I picked that up. Yes.
Not the entry level Coil, I would say. It's a live performance that is very intense, but very stubborn in a way. Yeah.
Yep. I have that one, and I have a few others. I think the first one I ever got was Music to Play in the Dark too, and I would like to get Music to Play in the Dark, but that one I don't know if it's been reissued, but I think I might have to do that one by mail because I just don't see it in the stores. But I see the others that I already have. And I did when I was in Seattle last week, not this past week, the week before. That's when I found a copy of the Aphex Twin.
Which one?
That's like I think
you can put yourself back on screen also, Richard. It's only me right now, I think.
Yeah, there's oh, that's right. I'm sorry. It's the first one, right? Is yeah. Selected ambient works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this one is, I guess you have this on is it on a label called 1972?
Well, the labels.
Okay.
It's a reissue, and let me see what it says on here.
It's either RNS or the 1972 C
Apollo
minor.
Records of RNS.
Yeah, which is where it was originally released. It's kind of a compilation, part album, part compilation, and I much prefer the second volume. This one, so we get into it, is the one Aphex Twin release from 1998, Caustic
Okay.
Window. It's a compilation of 3 EPs that were very, very limited: Joy Rex, G4, G5, and G9. Yeah. And
I'll
then
be looking for that. But again, it's uncommon, so at least around here. But they're becoming more common. I think there's been more demand for it. There's been more demand for Coil, for Aphex Twin, and also for Nurse with Wound. So they are doing these reissues, and they sometimes show up in the stores. So
for
that's
sure.
been very cool because I've really enjoyed listening to them. In fact, two of the hey David, two of my two records. I only have two records from 1998. Are in the sort of in that realm. I guess I could start here. I don't know if our other Swedish friend will be joining us, but is this one in which is probably pretty standard. But I find this record to be truly amazing and just so fun to listen to. And this was a reissue. This isn't an original one, but yeah, this was. There was a lot of very interesting and beautiful electronic music that was starting to come out in the late 90s and going into the 2000s. It wasn't so much the clownish electronic keyboards that you heard with a lot of with not a lot, but with some new wave in music like that. It was getting a lot more sophisticated in orchestrated, I guess is the best word that I could come up with. That there was
Erde from Versailles, the western suburb of Paris, very rich. I actually wrote the press release for that record.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know if this reissue has the information in here from that. I mean, it's got
the French one, obviously, for but maybe yeah. I know them a little bit. They are two very different guys. They nowadays they can't stand each other. Like Air doesn't like it's. I don't think it's officially over, but it's been over for like a decade or so.
Yeah, well, sometimes collaborations like that work really well for a while because there is that dynamic of tension in the creative process. And they had one other record, I think, that
they have
worth getting.
3 others. They have, and they have also the Virgin Suicide soundtrack, which was also very successful.
Okay, all right. So yeah, I think I might have seen one of their other releases in a store one time.
10,000 Hertz or something like that is the album after that one, where you see like some very avant-garde architecture with the cover is kind of red and blue.
Yeah, I don't recall. So, but I didn't buy it in.
Benoit from the band, he's been doing quite a few records, either solo or with others, which are more on the experimental or krautrock side of things, while the other guy is sticking to something a little more pop. They're both interesting guys, but I was in
After
a
a while, they
difficult.
couldn't stand each other.
No, they could, but I think like they got successful,
Yeah,
and throughout success, they learned to know themselves, and their desires started to not align anymore.
right, right.
And
Well, you know, yeah, that will happen.
there
In
was
fact,
also a matter of women.
well, you know, and there was in the Gunkles we recently reviewed the record Yaz or Yazoo,
Hmm?
and we were well, some of us liked the record more than others. I mean, I was not a huge fan of that record, but the Alison Moyet, I had never heard Alison Moyet before, and I was like, oh my god, this is uh, that is somebody I need to start looking for. And then I guess she did some other records that were kind of sounding synthy again, like Yaz. I just want to find something that where it's her voice is it's not being distracted by the keyboards.
By the way, do you remember like when we did '96? I showed this compilation Heads 2 on Mowax.
Oops, wrong big person. All right, let me. There we go. No, I don't remember that one, but who? Oh, that's a big box set. Jeez,
Yeah, and it was in 2 box sets. This is volume 1 of volume 2. No, it's part B of Heads 2. Here you have the
okay.
thing. This is the label that picked up Air originally. The first EP of Air was Moon Safari, I think, and it was on
Right.
Mowax. And eventually Mowax was distributed by a subsidiary of Virgin, and where Air was also. So yeah. This is the same culture, like the burgeoning trip hop that could have gone more avant-garde or more hip hop or more pop, and Air was probably one of the most successful bands of that, with Tricky and Massive Attack, obviously, and Portishead.
No, I'll have to. Massive Attack. That's another band that I am aware of, but I have never really listened to all that much. And I know one of their records is considered to be like, oh, one of the 500 records that you must own according to Rolling Stone. You know, and I sometimes that list is a little bit sketchy. You know,
No, Massive Attack is definitely a massively influential band of the '90s and beyond, and their track they had like a track in the early '90s called Unfinished Sympathy that has an amazing intro. Then it gets more into like soulful hip hop, which is less my thing, but it's a good track. And then with their their second album, I think they had the track called Karma Coma, which was very like legendary trip hop track. And then they had this album called Mezzanine, which I think is their third album, and that one is the album that didn't have the big hits, but is considered their best album, and probably the one on the list you heard or you read.
well then, all right. So who would you say for this period and say after post 1995? So
Mhm.
the end of the decade, going into the next decade and century in this particular genre of music, who was probably the most who was the leader? Who was everybody chasing?
Massive Attack and Portishead.
Portishead. All right. So right.
And in 1998, our year, came this record that changed everything.
Let me make you big for that. Boards of Canada.
Music Has the Right to Children. The original pressing with the braille, for the like letters for blind people.
Right. The Braille. Yes.
Braille, yeah, which was the trademark of the Scam label. I showed the EP from '96 that I wrote about. This, this is often considered as one of the top 20 records of the '90s, like by any list, even rock critics and stuff like that. It's it's almost a perfect album in many ways. It's very approachable. It influenced so many. I guess it was also the gateway album for people who didn't really know how to embrace electronic music, but wanted, or this helped a lot. But it's also an authentic album. It's not like, an album made for rock people. It's an authentic, like whimsical electronic music record that, like the guys, the two brothers from Boards of Canada, they are probably the prince of our days in a way. They can do no wrong. They are totally secretive. Whenever they release their next album, it's gonna be a huge thing if they ever do. Like for Record Store Day 2012, I think they released one EP, 6 copies only that they put randomly, secretly in 6 different record stores, like in the bins without the shop being aware of it. And these records, like one, there's one copy that is someone showed that he got it and he sold it for like £20,000.
Holy shit!
And
that's quite a promotional stunt to do something like that. So were they all in Britain?
Yeah, they're
they couldn't be traveling around to too many places, to secretly.
No. It was actually there was one in New York. It was in different, all over the place. And because Warp, the label, they know, like when this came out, this was a giant release in terms of underground music. So of course, but still. It is like what now it's going to be a 25-year-old album soon, and it's there's really not that many other albums from that area that tick as many classic or mythical boxes, in the sense that they have 4 releases before the EP that came before that it's still unclear if they are real or not. Because no one has them, or so few people have them, and when they have them, they can't even prove they have these. But it's
Does it even have an entry in Discogs?
Yeah, they have, of course. And there was at one point there was a bootleg of one of these that was totally fake. It turned out. They are so popular that there are people who have made fake releases by them, because it's possible, because it plays to their advantage in a way, until they realize that the music is not as good, and then it's time to say no. Enough.
Right.
I think that Jorgen would like that album, actually.
Which one?
The one we've talked about for the past 5 minutes.
Well, I'm busy running around searching for records.
Boards of Canada. Music Has the Right to Children. That doesn't surprise me either. No, actually,
I write it down.
Yeah, I have that one too. So, Jorgen, how are you doing for selections for 1998?
Well,
I hope you're doing better than I am.
Well, depends on how many you have.
I've already showed 50%. of what I have, and I showed one record.
Let's just say that 1998 was not my favorite year. I still think that it was the period when my interest for popular music was starting to decline, much because of it was hip hop. It was a whole lot of boy bands in 9 million forms. It was Spice Girls copycats. It was semi-sonic and those kind of rock music that didn't interest me one bit. So it was my interest for pop music was starting to decline. So I started to buy a whole lot of CD singles, but I do have some 98 also. Maybe not the one who was on the biggest chart in Sweden, but still I have.
Hey, Jim.
So what do you have you can show for a start here? Because once I show my next record, I'm going to be in moderate, and you can show more than one. I'm going to be in moderator mode because I will have no more to show.
I'm starting with one right now and double it up then after a while. And I'm starting with an album that I think was one of the best that I really one of the best albums in my opinion in 98. Not that ordinary, but still Madonna's Ray of Light.
Was that 19? Because I have that on CD, and was that 98?
98 indeed.
Okay.
And magnificent sound by William Orbit. She picked really a really master producer here. And it's a lot of songs are very floating, airy, and the melodies are fantastic. Frozen, the title track, Ray of Light, Nothing Else Matters, and such a fantastic, relaxing, and dreamy Madonna album. It's far from the poppy style that you had before, but it is real fun. This is definitely one of my favorite Madonna albums.
So which one do you prefer, this one or Confessions?
This one, if I have to choose. I like Confessions also. That is her last great album. But this one is in a whole different level. This is definitely more relaxing.
That Jürgen talked about, William Orbit. He was, I think he was the main artist. Maybe he owned the label Guerrilla in the UK, which was a progressive house, post-hardcore label. He had a series of like ambient house albums called Strange Cargo 1, 2, 3, 4, I think. That they haven't aged well at all, but they were at the time they were kind of interesting.
I think this was also the year when William Orbit had his own career. He had a minor hit with
his career is what I talked about. It was
but I think he had a minor hit with this year with a trance version of Albinone's Adagio for strings.
I just know that Strange Cargo 1, 2, 3 were like when they came out between 93 and 95. I think they were in the charts. They were like.
Because I had an album by him with that Adagio for strings trance version, and I like that. It was a year where many tried to do a new pop versions of classical music. And I will return to that later on. But Adagio for strings was a really good work by him.
Well, sometimes it seems like towards the end of a decade, there tends to be a shift going on in music, at least traditionally. I mean, when we went from the 70s to the 80s, there was very much a creative shift in the type of music that was being created when you had bands like Talking Heads and television, moving, after the punk period, the post-punk period. Then from the 80s into the 90s, there was kind of a different thing happening that didn't last very long because it all collapsed after Kurt Cobain died. But then you've got, I don't know, is there a transition similar happening in the late 90s into the 2000s?
Interesting thing is that when it comes to the transition from 70s to 80s, that is something I discovered afterwards, because I was 6 years old when the 80s came. But it was also, if you listen to like I do,
I was a
music,
freshman in college.
It was a time, those years when you're standing between two decades, is very interesting, because if you take a look at listen to the first years of the new decade, you're standing with one foot in something in the old, still trying to get rid of the old, and in another foot with something new, and that crisscross between the new and the old are always very interesting. It did very well for soul music 79 and 80, and it was also many great songs came in 89, 90 that were in one foot in the old 80s and once in something new in the 90s, and it was those crisscross between two decades are always interesting. 9900s I don't know, because I have partly started to stopping to listen to new music.
I feel you can say that for just about any year. Like there's always artists like in 84, 85, 86, 94, 95, 96.
Yeah, there is. There's individual artists, but
I think it's
there
something
seems to be a market shift that goes on in music.
I don't think it's like, maybe you said the right word. I think it's just marketing or us trying to rationalize things. But I don't believe that for a second there's anything to do with the turn of a decade that has an impact on the minds of.
I agree with you on that, because it's true. There are just some crazy, amazing shit can come out at any time that somebody does that, other musical artists they either ignore it because they're already on some gravy train that was created by the record label, or they do take notice because they care about the music they produce, and so they pay attention to it. That wasn't really the reason why I brought that up, but my one other record that I have to show is after I started listening to Slint and began investigating other bands that were falling under the moniker of math rock and the post rock type of styles. One record that I kept seeing mentioned as being one to pursue was this one here. This came out in 1998. This is the band Don Caballero, and the record is What Burns Never Returns. Weird cover. So I always kind of thought like this was some kind of like alien beam, rising up out of this mysterious Gothic house, but it's just a foggy night in these are the floors of a high-rise building next to a house. But yeah, the Don Caballero is
it Don Caballero?
Yeah, Don Caballero. Yeah. So this record, I have another one of theirs also that I found. Just again, really intrigues me because of the rhythm, the rhythmic nature of it. I mean, even the insert in here. I mean, it's such a sparse cover. I mean, this is like this is the insert is just black on one side, but then on the other, I suppose I could make myself big here. Maybe I'm getting some glare here, but so some liner notes, and that's about it. But yeah, there's roughly 2 songs per side on this double record, 2 to 3 songs. I like this one, delivering the groceries at 138 beats per minute. So it's somewhat descriptive of the music that they are creating, but at the same time, in the absence of strong evidence to the contrary, one may step out of the way of the charging bull. I mean, that's the title of the track. So there's a playfulness, in the like another one here is called Room Temperature Suite. So it's like, is this a lukewarm suite or what? So it's very interesting, and again, continued to attract my interest in that style of music, leading me on to other bands like Toe and Mouse on the Key, and to some degree Mono. I like Mono, but to me they're not math rock. They're more orchestral rock, but not prog. But anyway,
I saw Don Caballero a few times live back then, and they used to tour. They were somewhat popular, and I remember them collaborating with a band from France, friends of mine called Prohibition, that were doing very similar music, but very good guys, by the way. But this is kind of like to go back to this idea of like a turning point, etc. Like by '98, it was mostly fully digested that like rock, that was the past. Now it was the same the people who would have done the rock of 94, 88, 86. By 98, the people who had the mentality to do that kind of music, they were doing electronic music. There were a few exceptions like Don Caballero, but it was I guess it's music that is like, it was still possible to make good music, but it was very difficult culturally to make music that was like, this is the future. This is us challenging ourselves and challenging others, because rock kind of had said everything back then. It needed some time. I personally think that like, even if there's some new rock that I like, it's still, there hasn't, like, it's dead in a way. It's said everything it had to say. We can still enjoy it aesthetically, but culturally, it doesn't really impact society in any new ways, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree to that in some degree. I mean, there's some new, for example, recently I went to see a concert of the Sheepdogs, and they're 70s style rock, but it's good. They're really talented, and I love listening to it. But yeah, it's not innovative in any way, but it's still remarkable. And
it can be innovative inside its own paradigm, but not in the vaster, or I mean, it could maybe be, but like, trust me, I try to find these bands, and I don't find them.
Which I think is one of the reasons why I am more and more inclined to explore the electronic music realm a little bit more, because it just seems to be more interesting.
And on that note, a record that is perfect transition to that point in our discussion, this Square Pusher, Music is Rooted in One Note. This Square Pusher, this is, I think, his...
Actually, that says rotted, not rooted.
Yeah, rotted. Yeah. Yeah. For some reason, I always thought like, but this is Square Pusher is a guy who started doing like kind of hectic drum and bass in the early mid 90s, but not drum and bass that anyone would play in the clubs. It was too crazy in a way. And then he got signed very early on Warp Records, and he started to be, because when you're signed on Warp Records in the 90s, that means you've made it. You can do whatever you want, and you're still gonna make a living out of it. That was basically the biggest label. It was the factory of the 90s. It was the Virgin of the 90s, Warp. And and this record is basically the same aesthetic, but imagine if Jaco Pastorius and Aphex Twin had produced a Soft Machine album. That kind of sounds like that. because Tom Jenkinson, who is Square Pusher alone, is also a bass player, and he's obsessed with Jaco Pastorius, and he plays even faster. So, which is perfect when you do drum and bass, since drum and bass usual tempo is 175 BPM, which is quite fast. It's like close to oi punk. Like, to give you an idea, if that's too abstract, most techno is around 127, 135 BPM. So this is like 40 plus to that. And this album is the first one when he actually started to me to sound like a musician as well as a producer, because before that he was a producer to me. And yeah, this is an album I still love revisiting to this day. I still find ideas in it that I hadn't spotted back then. I bought this when it came out, and it's this album. He was already a big name, but this helped him secure himself a spot in the pantheon of electronic music from the 90s and so on.
I've been hearing so much about Warp Records, and I have been, there's this one particular store here in Chicago called Gramophone Records, where he has, how these sections of the bins. He has one section for Warp Records. So if it's on the Warp Records label, he wants his staff to put them in there, although they don't always do that. And the other one he does that with is with it's Warp Records. Is that the one the Peel Sessions usually are on?
The artists on Warp have often, like many, like John Peel had the most relevant artists do Peel Sessions, and like for example in that same year, for that Boards of Canada record I showed you, there is, I believe, here it is. Here's a Peel session of Boards of Canada from 1998, from the year we're talking about. And back then he did a whole series with the exact same artwork, and for different, like Otaker had one, Played had one, Miracalix had one, and Boards of Canada had one. And then there's the new series from a few years ago that you got one of these, like the Aphex Twin one, if I remember correctly, Richard.
Say again.
Like in 1998, Warp did a series of different Peel sessions with the exact same artwork, just color was different. And they did that again a few years ago. And you have one of these from a few years ago, the Aphex Twin one, I think, if I remember correctly.
The one I have is LFO.
LFO, yeah, okay,
yeah. I think, in fact, that cover, the Sid Barrett one that I want to get, is that kind of a cover, except it's more of the color was kind of a burnt orange.
There was a label called something Fruit, or Fruit of something. Wait a second.
There was, besides the Warp Records, though, that this place, he had another section, and I can't remember what the label was. And so that's what I was asking, if he had a section that was just for Peel Sessions, or if he put them in with Warp, because most of them were with Warp Records. So, Jorgen, while Stunty is taking this call, what do you...
It's a good moment to show this then, because I'm showing one before my real take, because Dr. Winston O'Boogie mentioned this, so I thought, why not? I'm going to show it. It hasn't have a proper sleeve because it was from a sellout that the Warehouse had, where they sold a lot of albums without a sleeve, so I grabbed it, and it was Oasis Master Plan, which was a compilation of B-sides. So showing it because Dr. Winston mentioned it. But I'm going to show a band that I discovered big in 1998. They had been making music. They had one album before, but I discovered them with this album. And it is the band Garbage and their album Version 2.0. It was some really great produced rock, poppy rock, might call it. And singer Charlemagne sounding has a lot of energy. And some really great tracks. I think I'm Paranoid, When I Grow Up, Push It. Some really amazing. This is a highly recommended album from '98.
A friend of mine had burned me some CDs, Garbage CDs, and I think I have one Garbage CD. I didn't bother to look at it because I haven't really listened to it. So I don't know what it sounds like or what any of it is like or whatever. So I'll have to pull them out and give them a listen because I think I might have heard one song of theirs that might have been a semi-hit. So I mean, I'm not like totally ignorant of Garbage, but I at the same time I really don't know anything about them. So that kind of I'm not quite the same with that, but similar in that I've familiar with them. I might have heard one or two songs, but I feel I'll have to pull it out and see. I just haven't had a great compulsion.
Let's just say there are a few bands that have failed to live up to its name, than Garbage. They're anything but Garbage,
which is probably a good thing then.
For me, I think it's the right name, but I find it very juvenile. The music.
Why am I not surprised?
No, it is like when you look at the talent in the band, it's amazing that they would do such basically there's three guys in this band plus the singer, and the three guys were some of the architects of some of the best rock of the late 80s, early 90s, and then they went on to do this. It's like a boys band for grunge. It's like really yeah. No, seriously.
I gotta remember that description. Yeah. A boy band for grunge. All right.
No, but I understand the appeal of it, but for me it was like, oh, come on, okay.
It was such a fun comparison because I hate both boy bands and grunge.
Well, so you say until you find stuff that you like in these things, but because you've showed stuff that I consider is boys band.
Yeah, it was just an odd comparison because I dislike both the band genres you mentioned.
but when you think about it, Garbage, it was like three middle-aged guys. They auditioned to find a singer. All the three of them were American, and they found a British singer who was kind of like a loose cannon, like tell her like look like a sexy vixen or something, a little bit like trashy, and that will bring the crowd, and we'll do the music behind. Don't worry about it. I remember it was so successful instantly. Because it's so cynical. It was basically a product by the record companies, like, let's cash in on that. Let's have guys who know what they do. And it's very well done. It's very catchy, but it's so cynical, in my opinion.
I'm going to admit that I didn't have MTV or anything like that when in 1998. So I'd never seen Charlemagne perform or anything. But what I've seen from the videos, she doesn't have that kind of a sex appeal look like several others in the music business have. But,
I'll have to go look up some images of her because I am the best person to judge her sex appeal.
She literally is like a prostitute killer from the Sin City comic book. She literally looked like that, like a trashy with like.
That sounds like she's got it going on.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Well, show something better, you then. I would
but
assume that because it's your turn. Since
no, but I understand it's.
Well, I want to show something that's kind of.
Oh, you do? I thought you were out.
I am, but the discussion about the Warp records and all that, because there is a label that I've recently discovered that, and you might be interested, in this as well, Jorgen. That so far, I mean, I only have 2 releases, and they have a couple songs on here that are from like '97 and that era, but it's Soul Jazz Records. And so I recently picked this up, and these are all like mixes of various mixes. And so far, they have a huge catalog of dance and techno and down tempo and a lot of different stuff. So I mean, they have a song in here from Dissemblance, who is Matilda Mallon.
Who curated that one compilation?
Compiled by Jonathan Burnup and Stuart Baker.
Okay, Stuart Baker. I know him. I don't remember who he is, but yeah. Oh, sorry, go on.
And another song is by Carcass Identity, and then there's one by Wang Incorporated, and then Kreidler. Yeah, Kreidler.
I've
From
played
Dusseldorf.
Yeah. Kreidler is it's a pretty cool band. Wang Inc. is more house disco. It's if I remember correctly, like very New York.
And they've got VQOA from French group, and Moisture from Sweden. I mean, look at this photo of. Let me make myself big here. This is from the booklet. All right, so there's Moisture. Check like that look on her face.
Related to Midshore.
Then there's Diambasade. It's a Dutch group. And Fitzsiegel and Selenian, Quaker Cochan. He's from France. So these are these mixes that they put together. I've been really impressed with the label, and I looked up at Discogs, and they have a huge catalog of all different types of dance music, even going into 80s and 90s dance house music. So yeah, I'm very impressed with the Soul Jazz records. And it doesn't look like, so far my experience, although I've only bought 2, they're all very highly rated albums, but so far 2 records, blind buys. I've been very happy with them.
Soul Jazz, they have a shop in London called Sounds of the Universe, which is a pretty decent shop. It's again like most record shops in London. You have to be there for it to be really good. You have to go every week because they don't have a lot of stock. If you go there as a tourist,
you're just going to be hitting the luck of whatever happens to be there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Chris from Record Talk wants a link.
Oh, all right. I will put that out there.
No. He asked if we wanted another person. We haven't answered that question yet.
We said if you want another person.
Well, by posting the link, I think we are.
Well, who is in favor for?
All right. So now that I've interrupted the flow, we go back. Stunty, what do you have for 1998 here?
The first record from someone who was in a pretty cool British post-rock band, one of the few of the time, that was quite unique because it wasn't going the same. Like Mogwai was very American in a way. They were very like noisy. But there's this guy who had this band called Fridge, who did 3 albums that were all good. But then he started to have a solo career, and this is his first record, a double one-sided 12-inch, and this is Fortet 3625, which is the length of the track.
Why would you do a double one-sided 12-inch? I mean, why not just do?
Because it's fun. Look, so one side with and the other is completely like polished.
I can agree. I can agree with you, Calvin. Richard, it sounds a little bit overkill.
No, I'll tell you why. Actually, because it's one track, so you need two records and two turntables if you want to have a seamless flow for the whole length of the track.
Okay, all right. There's
that was the thinking. So this guy Fortet, he's now a powerhouse of British music. He's a real big name. He's produced a lot of big pop artists, and his dad used to have a record store that was kind of mostly into jazz, and this record is obviously him like using the treasure trove of his dad's shop to some, like, this is a record that exists solely thanks to samples, and this is almost like a modern spiritual jazz record. Like, what if spiritual jazz had started with the technology of 98? And it's really, really cool record. And all the stuff he did in his early career, this album Dialogue, this is still very, very good. In the past 20 years, he's become so big in the underground that his music he does hits now. He does club hits as well, and his music doesn't do it for me. He's very popular and the music is still good, but this early one, 3625, this is the one I revisit the most. And he's one of these guys who made his own created his own path in electronic music, and when he was doing that, it was quite unique. I DJed with him a couple of times in the late 90s in Paris. Very nice guy, very, very quiet guy, very calm guy, quite different from most of the other people I knew from that scene. Or that scene doesn't mean that much in a way, but yeah. And this was on the Output label, which is the label of Trevor Jackson, who did a lot of curation for soul jazz, of these compilations of post-punk, industrial, funk, and house music. That's why
What's the name of the artist again?
Fortet.
Fortet. Okay. Instead of a quartet, it's a fortet.
Exactly.
All right. Interesting. Well, hello there, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Hi.
Nice to see you. I hope you have some selections to show when we get around to you, because
I've got a few. I don't have very many. So
I've run out already.
Oh wow!
So I had two. They were good ones. Two good ones. Hey, they were good ones. All right. So Jorgen, what do you have?
I'm having a soul album from a singer from the 80s that was singer in a band that I've shown a couple of times before here. And in 1998, I found this album in a thrift store, and I got curious because I like the band, but I was a little bit doubtful whether it was good or not. And when I came home, put on it on a CD, and I realized that this was so really great, actually. And it's the solo album from Mike Peters from The Alarm, called Rise. And as I do enjoy Alarm very much, this is little electrical rock, might call it, little electric tones in the ground, but very amazing produced and really great songs. I really like this album, Mike Peters' album Rise, solo from the band Alarm, who at that time had the band had split, and then he had signed away the right to the name Alarm, but tried to reuse it in 2000 without even owning it then. But highly recommended album.
So if I'm thinking of the same group, because I remember a band called The Alarm.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes, especially if it's a British band, they have one name in Britain, and then they go in the US, they get marketed by a different name.
We're talking about the Walesish Alarm with strength and the great rock hits. That just slipped my mind. Any of those, but
yeah. But then also, I know that sometimes there's two different bands that, and I should look this up, because there is a band.
The chant has just begun. Sorry.
Yeah. There's where is my shopping list for records? The one that I'm looking for. Oh hell, this is not going well. The Horrors.
Oh.
And there's a Horrors in the U.S. and then there's a Horrors in Britain, and it's the British band that I was hearing, and they're
good.
Good, and
Yeah.
I wanna find records by them.
I made those mistakes also a couple of times. Once when I was trying to find the Squeeze first album, and because there was a song that I really liked, went into a shop in Stockholm and found what I thought was it, because it was from the same year, but it turns out that it was two Squeeze, one from USA, one from UK, and I found the wrong one. And then I think it was a year later, I found a single which said the Smithereens. It said Smithereens, and I thought, Smithereens on single.
Right.
Wow, I gotta have this one. Got home, and it's totally strange. It was a woman that decided that was this really. It turned out that it was a Dutch band called Smithereens also.
Oh yeah, because
Yeah.
Where is
Yeah.
my Smithereens record? Yeah, I have Green Thoughts.
Yeah. Recently, I was digging and I found an album by Mark Allman. So I thought it was like Mark Allman from Soft Cell, but it turned out it was some prog band with Mark with a C rather than Mark with a C.
I heard some songs about it that actually was really good. It was released in 1981 or something. I Wish You Were a Girl Again or something like that.
A friend of mine lent me a couple Andy Bell albums, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh, the guy from Erasure. No, no, this is not him at all.
Andy Bell from is the guitar player from Ride, and he does amazing solo stuff.
He was also with Oasis, wasn't he?
He was hired by Oasis to do the guitar with the second or you don't.
Yeah.
I want to forget about that.
Yeah. So when
he's doing this currently, Glock. That's Andy Bell solo from Ride. It's really, really, really good.
Okay, because I've really enjoyed these records my friend lent me, just really very interesting stuff. All right, well, Chris, football or soccer? What are you going to show us?
Okay, well, first of all, I double checked the album that I was looking most forward to showing, because it was probably my favorite from the year, I discovered was early 1999, so I guess I will save it. I've got a few more, though. So, okay, we'll dig into CDs. Those of you that watch my channel know I like Juliana Hatfield. Yes, she released an album in 1998. There it is. It's called Bed. This was after she was off Atlantic Records and back onto like small labels. I have the Nerd Japanese version that has bonus tracks on it.
Had you broken up with her back then?
What's that?
Had you broken up with her back then?
Yeah. She wrote angry songs about what a cat I am. So, no. Actually, there was a period in her career where she had some like shitty rock musician boyfriends that she wrote songs slagging them off. She's kind of quit doing that in recent years. But this was an album that was She made the album in like 6 days on the cheap. She was really pissed off, but it's actually pretty good. Of course, I'm a big fan. But I found that a lot of the groups that I liked who were fairly popular in the early to mid 90s, by this time, a lot of them were like losing their deals. Some of them broke up and disappeared altogether. Some of them kind of petered out. At least for me, she's somebody who basically kept making an album every year, found her cult audience, and kept going.
I see. That's someone I pretty much unfamiliar with. I don't know. I know the name.
Yeah,
and I'm sure I've heard songs on the radio or something, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess she wasn't your girlfriend, Richard.
No. No. Who would have been from that era? Chrissy Hind? Maybe. All right. So as I said,
Okay, so
done. So we're back to.
This reminded me of that in '98 came out a record I played on my stream the other day, as is evident with 1998, a very good year, like one of the best year ever. But sorry, it was Zidane who won.
Yeah.
Romario.
So that was kind of a joke, but it's a fun record. But
yeah,
because
isn't there like a history of like the football music just being awful?
Oh, this one is good actually.
Okay. The English ones are always awful.
Yeah.
No. They are really great British football.
Yeah. So to go to cater to Richard, to involve him a little bit, I'll show Kreidler's album from 1998, as you just mentioned them on that compilation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the band from Düsseldorf. This is their third album, I think, and it has aged very, very well. I recently played it again, and I was shocked by how good it was and how still challenging and pleasant it was. And it's kind of it's probably the one band from Germany that was a new band from the I think they started in 94 or 95, and that's kind of like they continuing where krautrock left off around 72, 73 in a way, with the added culture of the American stuff from that you are so fond of, Richard, the slint and etc. There is some of that music that is obviously there, that it doesn't come from a vacuum, but it is also very crowdish without sounding like a crowd band. It sounds like something from the 90s, in a timelessness way. It's just very, very good rock. Some of the few rock from the 90s, the late 90s, I think still has a point in a way. And most of them went on to do other bands or other solo projects, more electronic, that were all interesting.
All right. Well, then, that brings us to you, Jorgen.
Well, let's keep up with the football team then. I don't care one bit about the football that are playing right now, and I didn't do it in '98 either. I thought that the theme that was popular by Ricky Martin was dreadfully horrible, but I discovered that there was actually a football team released also. I'm showing Dario G, who is a British dance project. Then there were 3 members. Now there are 1 who called himself Dario G. And Daryl G is great too. In this album, they make a very nice mix between world music and electronic dance music in some form, and it's really, really great. And I think it was from what, if it was 98 or the following for World Cup, I don't know. But they released a song called Carnaval de Paris. And it was a football song. And it was a really, really amazing song with a lot of drums, bagpipes. It was samba. And their biggest hit was when they sampled Life in a Northern Town from Dream Academy. And made it into a really, really nice percussion-filled song. And Daryl G was really, really amazing to listen to. He took this and that, and he mixed it together, different cultures into one dance beat, and really, really great.
So what constitutes a football song?
It's a I don't know from which soccer World Cup. It was 98 or 2000 because he released a new version also of Carnaval de Paris. So I don't know if it was that who was on the soccer World Cup or it was this original.
98 was the World Cup in France.
That I don't know. I think it was 98. He made it was extremely with a lot of drums, and it had a video with children playing football, and so it was. I think it was part of the soundtrack for soccer World Cup.
So it's kind of like the music that when I was in the high school band and we were sitting in the stands during a football game or a basketball game, it'd be those like cheer songs or whatever, but we'd have a lot of drums. The guy would lay the bass drum on its side and he'd be beating on it.
Yeah, but and not it didn't. It was for a certain country, because it was from an official part of the World Cup, the music for the World Cup itself.
The football songs usually, it's a British thing, and it's usually just a band that or an artist, his label that just managed to get the contract with the FIFA. So we're gonna do the official anthem for the country, and it's only in England they did that for such a long time, and it's just a cash grab. There's nothing.
Yeah, but this was not for just England. It was for the World Cup itself.
Yeah. There's the hymns in 2010. It was Shakira who did the Yeke Yeke or whatever it is. No,
but it wasn't. It wasn't either of the real big official, because that was Ricky Martin and Copa de la Vida. But it was
there. You're gonna.
One of the sub songs.
So
Okay.
Queen's "We Will Rock You," because it got co-opted by so many professional teams and played during games. They probably made quite a bit of money from the royalties on that.
If you want the best football song, it's "You Will Never Walk Alone," of course.
Yeah.
98, Britain had in my opinion, best song they ever had, the catchiest one, and that was Fat Les, that had Windaloo. That one is so amazing. Sorry, unfortunately, I don't have that one single. I can't show it.
All right, Chris, what do you have for us?
Okay, this has nothing to do with football songs. This is Neutral Milk Hotel with
God, I've heard so many people talk
in the
about
airplane
this
over the sea. This is like one of those. If you're a hipster record collector, you're actually issued this as part of your card. So it's sort of psyche, sort of lo-fi. It really I don't know if Stunty knows this album. It really
I know it was huge. It was back then. It was this album and Thinking Fellers Union local you know the one I'm talking about, that band, Thinking
Yeah, I
Stellar,
know. Yeah, Thinking Fellers Local
Union
282 or
187.
something like that.
Yeah.
I
And
forget.
Neutral Milk Hotel and Thinking Fellers were the kind of two bands that like post punk rock. Like it wasn't post rock, and it was still the lo-fi, like a little bit noisy, and like it was kind of like the people who were into indie, who didn't want to give in into electronic music. That was where they went to.
Yeah, I mean, at least in the U.S., this was pretty much completely against what was becoming popular at the time, because this was the time when like all your terrible post grunge bands and your terrible new metal bands and all of that was popular. So, and this was nothing like any of that. So,
Well, I'm going to have to look for that. I see it occasionally, but I just heard so many people talk about that record
yeah.
that I've got to.
Yeah. This is almost a stereotypical like critic's favorite record collector sort of record that if you
Even
ask
back-
the average person on the street, they would have never heard of it.
Is it
Even
like
back
Whipped Cream? It's like one of those records that you have to own just because.
Oh
it's
no,
records?
no, whipped cream's totally the opposite, because whipped cream sold a bazillion copies. That's why there's still a bazillion copies available.
Yeah.
This is the kind of record you would
Everyone's
find
dirty old uncle bought whipped cream back in the day.
this you would only find in the indie record stores, and when I mean indie, is like really indie record stores.
Yeah,
back
they
then.
didn't sell this at Walmart. In fact, I'm pretty sure at the $15 Walmart sale, I don't think they had any Neutral Milk Hotel.
What was the original label of that?
This is on Merge, but this is a reissue. I don't know if that was the original
Merge.
label or not.
It was probably on Merge then, because Merge existed back then, but Merge was a micro label.
Yeah.
They just hit the gold when this music got popular again, or not again. Like I remember, like the guys who were into that, they were so obnoxious back then. They were the worst people who loved it, because they were so sure of this is the only way. This is the only good music in the world right now. It was horrible. But yeah, I don't like this in it.
We're up to you now, Stunty.
I was into much different, like variety of things, but the people who were into that, they were into low, into the early Beck stuff. It was like so. I guess that like they would go on and like you'll know us by the Trail of the Dead. They would go also maybe what's that band?
Oh my God, I have one of their records.
Like basically you'd be into amphetamine Reptile. And
yeah, I recently picked up a You Will Know Us by the Trail of the Dead. I picked it. It's not a bad record, but I just thought the cover was just way too cool to pass up the record. Yeah, it turned out to be pretty good. Conrad Keeley, I don't know what that is. Maybe that's the artist. Anyway, yeah. What do you got for us, Santi?
Okay, so I got a very cool series of 7 inches. It's Coil, and in 1998, that was kind of their big return. Like basically, 1998 is the year where Coil got accepted by the serious critics that they were not just like a goth band. So they did 1 7-inch for each solstice of the year. So the spring equinox, summer, autumn, and winter. And this is really what is foretelling the music to play in the dark 1 and 2, which they hadn't done any music like that before. And 2 of these came only as 12 inches, as 7 inches, and 2 came as 7-inch and CD singles with bonus tracks, which got issued in a double CD, I think, but also as a bootleg of all these 4 plus the bonus tracks. And if you ordered the CD of this from the band themselves, they would add a CDR of a performance from back then, which got bootlegged also a few years later. Also, yeah, all these are not that easy to find, and
Are they
it's
good bootlegs? Are they good sounding bootlegs?
really good. And this one is so good. It's called Coral Moon's Milk in Four Faces. In the bonus, yeah. And this is an original cover by John Balance. Even if it's a bootleg, it's still him art like lifted from him. But when these came out, I remember buying them at the rough trade shop in Paris, and back then it was just a band I liked. It was okay, I'm getting these. I don't see anyone else getting them, but they are available. No one cared that much about it, and I remember physically. I have the image of picking them up in at the first floor of the rough trade shop in Paris, and having no point of reference for that kind of music back then. I already had some Coil, but this was so new, and it was kind of do I like it? I'm certainly intrigued by it, but it wasn't. It was kind of a little bit intimidating back then. Also, the fact that I had literally no one around me who cared about that music, who knew about them, and when I tried to share it, it wasn't a big success. But then, because of these records, they started to get good reviews by Wire magazine and really good journalists. And suddenly, oh, okay, they've been accepted by the great rock critics. So now it's cool to listen to them. And of course, these were gone when that happened, and which was kind of an interesting moment in that kind of music history, since suddenly they were getting attention, like not mainstream attention, but like proper legitimate attention, when their records were already in a way gone, cult, and so much so that to have them on vinyl, you needed to have bootlegs of this after.
Well, I see that I'm looking up in Discogs. They're not cheap for singles. I mean, they're $15, but they're not like they're not like $100 singles.
Oh, some are actually. If you look at them, or maybe not 100, but some of them are like $60-$70. I mean, they did quite a lot of these, which is quite interesting. But like, just think about it. 98, they self-released that. This is on their own label, and they still did like, I think each one has at least one or two color variants, and I'm sure they did at least 1,000 or 2,000 of each of these. And because the fact that they arrived to me in Paris in a couple of record stores was already kind of a miracle.
Interesting. And I see also, I looked up the unofficial listings, although Discogs sometimes they won't let you can't buy them. But,
and all of these, by the way, were made as specifically for the solstice of that time of the year. So each of these are kind of rituals, like trance recordings of the moment.
Okay, interesting. I have to see if I can listen to them online as well. All right. I'm sorry, you were going to say something?
Yeah. No, I said Jason is here, but you already saw that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So he had some stuff to pull. All right. So Jorgen, what do you got next?
I'm picking now a record that I bought pretty new when it came. I got a good deal from the record store. They had a good price for it, so I bought it, and I showed the band before. I'm talking about Saint Etienne and the album Good Humor, and it's an album that actually recorded in it is recorded in Tambourine Studio, and it is the same studio that the Cardigans made their first albums in. And it sounds, comparing to the others, this sounds very much more indie poppy style, very cute, very charming indie pop with a little cozy mood actually, and definitely a great one, but still very much different from the previous more electronic stuff that he did before. So highly recommended. Good humor, the Saint Etienne with Sarah Paxton, of course.
I remember you talking about them. Last 3 shows, I think you had a record for each year.
But this is the most modern Saint Etienne album I have, so now I will be keeping my mouth shut about them.
No more releases, eh?
They are, but I don't have it.
Oh, okay. And welcome, Jason. Good to see you there.
What's up? Sorry, I'm late, guys. What did I miss?
That's all right.
We talked about bad football songs for the World Cup.
Yeah. Well, Canada lost today, so that was a big problem. Yeah. We weren't going to win.
So, Chris, what do you have for us?
Okay, well, in my last segment, I showed Neutral Milk Hotel, and I talked bad about the more popular genres at the time. And so to counteract that, I'm going to show System of a Down's debut album. So I'm pretty sure Jorgen does not own this. And so I
actually bought it last week.
Yeah, of course you did. So I remember a lot of people who I knew who liked like metal and hard rock in the 80s when grunge came along. They hated Nirvana, they hated Pearl Jam, they hated grunge, but they would make an exception for like Alice in Chains. And so I'm doing the same thing with new metal. I'm making an exception for System of a Down. I hate all the other groups in that genre. I deny they're part of that genre.
All right.
By the way, Ed just made a very good point that Jorgen could have actually jumped on our football team, as Saint-Etienne is the band named themselves after the city because of the football team in Saint-Etienne from the late 70s, which Platini came from. And
yeah, I know that they're named after a French football soccer team.
Yeah. Oh, I have a question. You know how the English people talk about footballs coming home and annoy us all with it? Didn't that come from like one of their annoying songs?
What do you mean?
Football's coming home?
Oh yeah, there's something like that, yeah.
Wasn't that one of the terrible songs?
Yeah.
Terrible football song.
All right. Well then, Jason, what do you got for us?
I got some stuff. I want to ask Chris a question though. Why do you like System of a Down? What is it that got you? Is it the songs? Is it the vocals? Is it just by chance?
I mean,
nostalgia.
I kind of like the vocals because Serge sounds. I mean, it's so crazy how he goes from like rapping to growling to like regular clean singing. I mean, that's got to be rough on your voice to keep on switching back and forth. And I used to like when I would go jogging, I had this stretch where I had them on an iPod, and I would listen to them every time I jogged, and it pumped me up for it. So yeah, but yeah, and just about everyone else in that genre, I pretty much hold in disdain. But I like to put down. So
I used to when I was running. One of my favorite running songs was Beyonce, "Ring the Alarm," and it was a dance mix, but it was perfect rhythm for running. All right, Jason, what do you got?
I don't own any Limp Bizkit the show, so.
Well, they may be due for revival, I guess, late 90s metal. I got no metal in my pile. I got a small pile, and I got some house and techno, obviously, but I thought I'd start off with some hip-hop first. So this one's Show and AG, the full-scale EP. I don't know, Stunty, if you know these guys.
I think you made it clear that you 90s, late 90s hip hop doesn't exist for you, so I don't know what you're doing right now.
Well, what I'm doing, I've got 2 exceptions to the rule. It's true, the golden era is long gone, but this is now the new era of kind of minimalist. You think raucous, that kind of New York sound, just like beats and rhymes, maybe a sample, maybe one sample, Anyway, that's a dope EP. And these guys actually had an earlier track called Fat Pockets around 93. This is their 98 EP. And then, of course, this is the mega beast. This would probably be my number one for the whole year.
Gangstar.
Gangstar. Moment
But
of Truth.
That's late Gangstar also.
They're back. This is late Gangstar. I mean, this is dope. And I saw them on this tour. This is the only time I saw Gangstar. MC Guru, who has passed away, he was doing push-ups on the stage. He was pumped. And DJ Premier was like scratching and doing like a dance kind of routine. It was awesome. Saw them in Montreal. But yeah, it was a good Gangstar album. So those are my two hip-hop picks for the day. I don't know if you had any hip-hop yet.
Gangster, that is, contrary to the name for those who don't know, not at all a gangster rap band. Quite the opposite.
No. A little bit more conscious.
Holy.
Cool New York vibe.
Yo, you are the first person to bring in the hip hop.
The hip-hop for 98. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty much, that was at the point where I pretty much lost touch with hip hop. So
Well, it got really cheesy and commercial. Like, there was a lot of dance hip-hop at this point, like Puff Daddy, Biggie,
Yeah.
Mace.
and I never really came back. So
Yeah,
But these
that's
are two solid underground records.
It's
to
also
get.
when it starts to get interesting again with Anti-Pop Consortium, Anticron, and a lot of all the underground stuff from New York that is
Yeah,
not conscious rap stuff, that like going back to electro, and yeah.
Well, actually, I got one more since Ed just showed it there. I'll show you my Black Star because he just mentioned Black Star. But this is the instrumentals of the album. Now, I don't know if you guys caught Black Star on Saturday Night Live 2 weeks ago. Back from the Dead, Mos Def is in Black Star and Talib Kweli, and they're on that Raucous label, which is very cool underground hip hop. But this is an instrumentals only record.
Company
so.
Flow was one of the biggest release back then, and now what's the name of the producer? He's got he's got this super popular band, like with the guns, the hands.
Oh yeah, Run the Jewels.
Run the
Was
Jewels.
he was Company Flow, right?
Yeah.
So
he was
this is an underground thing that was happening, right? Like, some people were tapped in, but most people knew the commercial stuff in '98.
yeah, I wasn't tapped into anything.
As DJs, we came across some of it. So
Yeah.
it was cool.
Yeah, I was not part of that world. So
All right. Well, then, circling past me. All right, Stunty, what have you got?
So I'll show my favorite techno album from '98. There's quite a few, but this one is real techno, and it's the only album from Juan Atkins under that name, Infinity, Skynet on Trésor, the German label. Juan Atkins is the father of techno in Detroit in 84, 85. And he's one of these guys who's never lost it. Like, for like now soon 4 decades, he's managed to stay relevant. And this one is I it's, for me, it's my favorite Juan Atkins dance floor album, and there's quite a few. And this one is, that's where he managed to actually have music in it. It's not just drums and bass. I mean, he's always been very musical. He did a collaboration with Thomas Feldman from Paris Schomburg. So he's been a very interesting guy. In the 90s, early 2000s, he lived in Berlin, and he was kind of hostage there because the guys who were booking him and having him play, they hooked him on drugs, and he was basically, he was almost hostage in Berlin for a good decade. And quite a lot of the stuff he did back then was maybe a little, I mean, he didn't do that much, and when he did, it was not always on the top. But this one is so good. Skynet by Infinity, Juan Atkins production on Trésor, Metroplex. Metroplex is his label.
I don't have that one. That's a good one, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Trésor. I've been to Trésor a couple times. And I have old school Juan Atkins from like the 80s. Because you're right, he's one of the original Detroit 3.
He's the original. He's the guy who did before the Detroit 3.
Before
So
Kevin and
Cybertron-
Derek? Yeah,
No,
I
but
guess.
Cybertron was before that.
It's true. Very electro, right, back then. maybe not calling it techno yet.
No, still techno. Like is really the first techno track is the first one to use the word techno that way as well.
But this album, like you said, this is like weird period for him. The '90s, he's not really in. I don't think. Like, is this a compilation, as you call it? Is it just dance
it's
tracks?
An album. There was one single called Skyway on it that is really really good as well. And I think it's the track Coffee Shop Connection. They had another version on that single. They're both worth having. Like if you like this one, so this is a 10-track album, which is not that many for an album from that time. If you look at my copy here, can you make me big, Richard? Can you make me big? So I've written the BPM of 6 tracks. So for me, that means that there's 6 tracks on this worth playing. That's probably the best ratio of any techno albums I have. Like to find 6 tracks that I find good enough, unique enough that all of these, like I would play them. That is very seldom, because most of albums of that, when they're good, they have like 1, 2, 3 tracks that you really think these are really hits in a way. This one is just
bangers.
Very good value for the money.
The only Detroit, I can't find the dates of these are all remixes of older classics, but I don't know when they're from.
So Underground Resistance remixed by whom?
It's Tyree Cooper.
Tyree Cooper is Chicago. He's not Detroit.
But that'd be cool, man, to hear a Chicago version of a Detroit.
Tyree Cooper is one of the biggest originator of acid house, like really
right. These are the titles that are. I mean,
that's cool, man. When did you get that? Is that new reissue thing?
It's pretty new.
Yeah.
Tony Humphrey is the Zanzibar. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he did so many mainstream mixes and dubs under his name Zanzibar.
He's the Jersey sound. He's very deep and melodic. I saw Tony Humphries DJ once in London at the Ministry of Sound. It was the most expensive nightclub experience ever. It was like $20 coat check. I mean, it was a very expensive club at the time.
Ministry of Sound, when they were in business,
big.
Their clubs were like all around the world.
They had a label.
I liked the compilations that they were issuing.
Yeah. There's a really good comp by Tony Humphries, actually. I think Volume 1, mixed series of Ministry of Sound.
In fact, where is it?
Jorgen would like this stuff if he bought DJ mixes, but I don't think he buys DJ mixes.
Not too many.
He only buys the albums.
I'm a radio edit guy.
When I was in Seattle, I saw this.
Yeah, that's the logo.
So this is this. That was $3. I thought, what the hell? It's Ministry of Sound, with this.
Yeah, but Ministry of Sound during the 90s, and like it's more like it's not really a techno club. It's like a progressive house club.
Very house.
And I found this too.
That's an old classic. Yeah, 90s.
Yeah, so
90. That would have been 91 or something.
This is actually 1988.
88.
Yeah, that's before they have the DJ. They're in Emerson when they're
going from post-punk to dance there on that album.
Exactly.
Kind of.
Yeah,
but
and it's good. I mean, I really liked it. I do like it. I mean, and so
I'd have to revisit that. I liked Underworld a bit when they first came out.
What was the name of their band before Underworld? They had like a weird name, and they looked like total freaks.
Oh, really? I don't know.
No, they had like a few albums, and like they even went to they went and recorded at Connie Planck's studio in Germany. But like they looked like the Cure at their worst, but Boy George and Cure together.
I always thought they're a bit like Happy Mondays because they were kind of rock, jangly stuff, and then they found ecstasy and they got into the dance thing.
No, they had a completely different story.
I don't know. I don't know.
We're getting off on a tangent.
Before, but the sound of this one is definitely like dance club sound. whereas when you got Second Toughest of the Infants in that era, that's when the sound that I recognize. So when I first heard this, I was like, oh, this is so different from, you know, what they were doing with Buku Fish and Second Toughest of the Infants, and but I like it. It's certainly good house music, and with that. So oh, hello, Greg. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
So so where were we? Who are we on? Who's next?
You, maybe, yeah. I think it's Richard, no? Or no?
Oh, you just showed something, Jason, right?
No, Stunty did actually.
Stunty.
Yeah.
So we're over to Jorgen then.
The Carpi, the band before, like Underworld, before Underworld, it was called Freuer, which
Oh, yeah?
no one remembers, but like they had like 3 albums.
I'll check that out. I'll look that up.
Hey, Craig.
And I'm leaving the techno dance floor for a while and going really down in mood.
Going to get a drink now, huh?
An album that when it came out, I thought it was dreadfully boring. And now when I'm adult, even older, I bought it and listened to it when I was sitting at Subway that we had here in Sundsvall. And I realized that, hey, this is so beautiful. I couldn't stop listening to it.
So
And
many
it's
times you
Orion.
were wrong in your life before, huh?
Pardon?
So many times you were wrong in your life before, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I even I can wave a white flag and say, hey, I was wrong back then. Orion's up.
I have that when I decided not to show it because I just decided not to show it. But anyway,
you knew someone else would show it.
yeah.
Well, I wasn't going to show it.
Did I steal it from someone that doesn't have that many?
Well, no, I saw Chris's. He ranked all the REM albums, and I don't think Up was very far.
Yeah, Up came very early in the video.
Well, I think this is a very relaxing album. Very
It is.
very
I don't
calm,
dislike
and I
it.
really like it. I really like the lyrics. I like the mood in it, and Day Sleeper, fantastic song, Lotus. So highly recommended REM album. They have turned out from an album that I literally thought was dreadfully boring to one of my favorites by them. How Life Can Change.
Yeah.
And so by dreadfully boring, are you talking about New Adventures in Hi-Fi?
No, I don't find any REM album boring today.
Oh.
Or those I have.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant the album that REM's album that came right before that.
I don't have that one, so I can't answer to it.
Okay, so because the one before was one of my favorites. That one is not,
and I'm pretty sure I would love that one also.
So
if they haven't gone into doing rap, and I would sincerely believe that. I don't think he would do that.
Well,
you didn't like their appearance with KRS-One?
Who?
No let rule supreme over nearly everyone, or KRS-One.
I think I recognize that name. Yes.
Yeah.
KRS-One,
I know
he's
the
still
name
good.
too. I thought I used to have one of their
New York rapper
singles, but anyway. All right, Chris, what do you have?
All right. Well, I'm not going to show any techno either. So this will be sort of on the theme of a lot of the groups that were popular a few years before, who were putting out records that probably weren't as popular as some of their earlier ones, but some ones I still think have some validity. I know people love to bag on Courtney Love. There's a lot of good reason to, but Celebrity Skin, my jewel case is pretty beat up. I thought there were a couple of really good songs on this album, like Malibu and Northern Star. And I realize lots of people just don't get into her as a person. This isn't Liz Phair's best album, but it's not Liz Phair's worst album. It's called White Chocolate Space Egg. So a couple more things from 1998, as I'm getting really thin with stuff to show from that particular year.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at my Ministry of Sound CDs, and they're all
Yeah.
from the 2000s.
Yeah. So I don't know if anyone cares about these albums or not.
I like Hole. I saw Hole live once at a festival.
Was it
Okay.
good or was it a train wreck? I heard it's usually one or the other.
It was an outdoor festival, so sound is not going to be great, and it was just fun. They weren't like the main act or anything. They're just one of the acts. Kevin
So they
Bacon
didn't have
played
enough
that
time
day.
to get trashed.
I bought this when it came out, and I listened to it recently for the first time in over 25 years, hoping that I would hate it as much as I did very quickly back then, because this is worth quite some money, and unfortunately I kind of like it. So I guess
It's not as bad as you thought.
Can't sell it then, huh?
no, but like it's a good album for that. Like it's completely different. This is her first album, or their first album, and by the second one, it's already completely different.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a fan of L7. Are they better than L7, or they're different? I guess
They're very different. L7 is more like it's got kind
More
of
punk.
like an alternate. It's more like an alternative band, and
Yeah,
they have
L7's definitely got more of a punk spirit to it, and I definitely like L7 more than Hole.
I think they have more of a pop spirit as well.
Yeah.
This is noise. This is like noise rock. The L7 was always like catchy melodies.
catchy. Yeah, that's what I like.
7 Year Bitch would be kind of in between, like the
I'm going to admit that I haven't been that much into that band a whole lot.
Okay,
Working with the dad joke.
Actually,
Someone's got to do it.
this is a fun record because this is the demos of that album of Hole, and on the B side, on the other side, is Babes in Toyland, which was the other band kind of like that. That were more. It was the Babes in Toyland were the L7 we wished had been big, in a way.
Yeah, I've got one Babes in Toyland. My understanding is that the main Cat B. Ellen from Babes in Toyland and Courtney Love had been in a band like way early.
Yeah, I think you're right.
All right, Jason. So what have you got?
All right, I'm back up. All right, I'll do a couple of house tracks here. This was also a very big track in '98. This was one of the biggest. This is Armand Van Helden with Dwayne Hart, You Don't Know Me. And that's a song a lot of people will know. Maybe even Jorgen. It's on a compilation maybe somewhere.
I know Armand Van Helden, the Daxos.
This is on his own label, I think, Armed at this point. And it's a logo. But yeah, this is a big hit. He already had hits earlier with Witch Doctor, and then he kind of came back in '98 with this one. There's a video for this. I saw it the other day on Twitter. Really great vocal. It's not Byron Stingley. It sounds like Byron Stingley on the vocals. I think it's a lower voice range than Byron Stingley. And then a couple of things on large records out of New York. Came out in '98. I'm kind of struggling here for '98. This is a band called 95 North, and then this is the legendary Kerry Chandler. So Kerry Chandler, huge deep house guy, kind of second wave, I would say, right? Like, kind of got his start in these late '90s. Minimalist kind of sound, just like a lot of heavy beats, but soulful to that swing. I've seen him DJ, and this large label is really good out of New York.
Kerry Chandler is interesting. He was. I mean, now I'm sorry. I'm gonna be an asshole, but Kerry Chandler was a fan of my music. And
here it comes.
I had many times, like, we played together in Ibiza quite a few times, and he told me, like, he has an interesting story because he's New Jersey, New York.
Yeah.
And interesting story. When you listen to his music, it's very positive, joyful, soulful.
Right.
His daughter was murdered by a serial killer.
Wow.
And it was kind of a famous case. Yeah. And his studio, he showed me pictures of his studio where he makes all that music. It looks like a Nine Inch Nails video. He has like puppets, like dolls spiked on the walls, and like really like difficult images around him, because like he was really destroyed by that, and in a mindset like that. But the music he was making in that studio was really like the total opposite of it.
Yeah, he's very soulful, very deep. He's from Is he from Jersey or New York? I don't know.
I think it's New York, but he was
Okay.
in between.
Yeah, Kerry
Huh.
Chandler.
That's connections like that are always, really, really interesting and also, macabre at the same time. But that kind of stuff interests me because of my journalism background. So
Mm.
The
anyway,
first time I met him, it was funny. It was in our hotel at Ibiza. Me and the guy I had my band with, we were sitting having breakfast, and I tell my partner, look, it's Kevin, yeah,
Kerry.
Kerry Chandler, and like we were talking, should we go and talk to him? And we were like in the discussion on that, and while we're discussing, he's coming to us. Oh, by the way, guys, I really, really love your music.
Wow, that's nice.
Nice.
That's nice. Good point.
nice.
That was
All right, let's-
I'm going to bail a little bit early today, but I'll
You're
try
gonna
to
watch
be back
the
next
Apollo,
week if
huh?
we do 1999, because then I can show the album I was intending to show today.
Yeah.
I looked it up, and it was
Is
a
it a Prince
1999
album? This is a Prince album.
It is not a Prince album. I'll let you show the Prince album.
Good to see you,
I
Chris.
can
I'll
show
see you
it.
on the
Alright.
streams.
Thanks
All
for
right,
joining
good
us,
man.
Chris. All right. And yeah, so we're back up to the Stunty,
Yeah.
and
I'm gonna have to leave quite soon, but
we're
maybe
going to wrap this up in the next 10 minutes anyway.
I
So
only got 3 left, so I'll show them all at once if you want.
I have a lot, but never mind. So I'm gonna show one of the few rock records from that year. Unsaints continuing with their theme of bloody New York. Unsane is, probably my favorite noise rock band. I've seen them live 6 or 7 times between 92 and around 98 actually. This is their last good album in my opinion. I think they did one after that was more kind of a little bit metal in a way, and then they quit, and I think now they're reunioned because they are a legacy band now. But
They're on Sub Pop, right?
no, this is they were on Amphetamine Reptile, and this
Yeah.
is on Relapse, because Amphetamine Reptile didn't exist anymore back then, I think.
Yeah.
But I mean, Chris probably knew them, and yeah.
Maybe, yeah. I remember them. I don't think I ever had anything. I thought I had maybe a 7-inch. I was looking in the disco.
They had quite a few 7 inches, and they were massively intense. Like they were like bass, guitar, drums, and singing, and it was almost industrial music. But at the same time, at the core of their music, there is blues. Also, you could feel that they had, like in the bass line, there was something really not bluesy, but the funk of the blues in a way. And it's a band that listening back to it nowadays, I still understand the music. I don't think this is not nostalgia. This is still music that does something to me.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Sounds like there's something in there.
all right, Jorgen, what have you?
How many rounds do we have more?
Well,
This is it.
make this one count. All right, let's make it. All right, 2. We'll do
Let's
2
not-
more rounds.
Like too many albums at the same time, because
Yeah, because I have one that I would show singles also, but I take the vinyls, the CDs I have.
Do your short list first, and then so Stunty will be able to show another time and then leave, and then you got your big list after.
Well, then I think that this is the shortest.
That's all right.
I have a 99, 98, 99, 2000 were years where I bought a whole lot of CD singles. I thought to celebrate my CD single buying from those years, a bunch of CD singles that I bought. This is Anti-Loop. It have some quite commercial trance that I really, really enjoyed. and this is Believe, really atmospheric dance music. I talked about earlier that there was some kind of trend in '98 to do classical music and do it more, putting some other genres onto it. A couple of examples: German Sweetbox, that took Bach's air and did Everything's Gonna Be All Right. Back then I didn't like it. Then I realized that, hey, this isn't so bad at all. And in Sweden, we had a band called Van, who took Mozart's Symphony No. 40 and turned it into Eurodance in I's Got My Love. And it's really, really nice. And what would Jorgen be without Depeche Mode? Only When I Lose Myself. The singles from their second compilation, Singles 86 to 98, that came this year. This one is a little favorite that I, maybe a little cheesy, but still very charming and cute. And I liked it when it came very much. Billy, Because We Want To. And we have some British sample dance music. This one with a horrible cover lead, but still great one. Bamboo, British with Bamboogie. They took a song by Casey and the Sunshine Band and turned it into a whole lot better and more catchy and a lot of horns. And I really like this one. And we have a band that originally took the voice of Jane Fonda and turned it into a hit. Jane Fonda backed out and said, hey, I don't want you to release that with me on. They pulled the single back, and years later they put an ordinary studio girl in and did Jim and Tonic, Space Dust. Really catchy and...
Still went for the jazzercise kind of whatever cover from the Jane Fonda workout.
I'm a huge fan of these British bands that have a little fun in the studio and pick this and that and comes out with some really great dance music. And 90s were full of them.
All right. So Jason, do you have, you were consulting over there and he's got his mic turned off and he's pulled his earplugs out, so he can't hear me say anything. So maybe we'll just skip him for now and we'll come back to him. And Stunty, what do you have then?
Well, I was in the same position as I was looking for some stuff, but okay. Okay, wait a second. Yeah, I wanted to show a few EPs then, but there was a very important Theo Parrish EP I wanted to show, which is...
we jumped past
I'm
you,
back.
Jason.
Okay, yeah, I just
We
had to
jumped
make a
past you.
sale
We'll
here.
come
So
back to you in a second.
okay, all right, fair enough.
No, go on, Jason, then.
Oh, all right.
Okay. I'm just selling some records here. I just sold some hip hop from '98. Some Talib Kweli. I don't know if it was influenced by the show. I don't know.
Oh,
Richard, you're making me sales, man.
yeah, well, one of those 10 people must have...
Who's tuning in? Okay. I got the big one here. Stunty, I don't know if he's shown anything from this label yet, but you want to make me big? Triumph by Jürgen Pape. This is Compact label, Compact #1. Little old label from Cologne, Germany. Very design heavy. That's their logo and their design look that always keeps going on for years. They're still around, big compilations and stuff. But they really pioneered this kind of new, sleek, kind of minimal techno sound, like minimal tech house. Very, very minimal at times. I used to try to DJ some of this in the late 90s, and it really depends on the room, because if it's a noisy room, you don't hear these like quarter notes and stuff. But anyway, this is what started it all. But this is really a big label for the early 2000s. But the first one came in '98. And then the last two I'll show are also techno. Christian Morgenstern is one. I don't know if Stunty knows that.
Yeah.
I Bear Because You Do, which is a take on the Aphex Twin album, right?
I Care Because You Do, yeah.
This is just great, heavy, chunky tech house. Could work in a house set or a techno set, which I was big on at the time. Same with this guy, Omega Man. This is a In the Box, Out the Box label. This is something else from 98. But I didn't have a lot from 98. It wasn't a really big year. I think because I didn't have a lot of money. I was still in university and going out to clubs, but not having a lot of cash left over for records.
Well, yeah, at that time for me, I was, I wasn't buying a lot of records. So anything that I have from some of these years are records that I bought, later, much later.
Yeah.
And
These
the
are all
late
when I bought
90s I was not, I wasn't buying a whole lot. And I didn't start buying. I probably had a lot more CDs, but I traded a lot of them back for records, and started. Let me reverse that. I traded my records in for a lot of CDs, and so I ended up losing a lot of vinyl that I did not start recollecting until maybe I started 6 years ago, and so gradually getting that stuff back in.
I think that one of the really important aspect of '98 is that a lot of the electronic music that was coming from the dance floor perspective, suddenly a lot of these guys did music that was not for the dance floor, and that was probably without even knowing, like in different ways, trying like building a bridge with the old avant-garde they had no idea of, because they come from hip-hop, they come from electro, they come from house techno. But so I got a little bunch of like the Boards of Canada album I showed, and the Square Pusher, they were with that in mind as well. So Gas is Wolfgang Voigt, who is
from
my
Cologne.
king. Who
we
is
just
the,
talked about Compact.
the label that Jason just showed. But this is him on Mille Plateau, which is a more avant-garde electronic label. Mille Plateau is the title. The name is taken from Gilles Deleuze,
Philosopher. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And this is König Forest from which is I think it's drawn from Thomas Mann, and this is like really dusky and dusty techno. Like it's almost like there's no attack on the percussions, and with classical music samples in the background being filtered so that they just become tones, and it's a really good album, which means that in back then there was not that much internet yet, and so this was kind of in a vacuum. The people in the UK, they weren't really aware of that, because they had a lot going on for them. They had of course Ottaker with LP5. This is reversed, of course. Yeah. Well, this is their fifth album, which is kind of when they got. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. When they got. Suddenly, they became a really big band. They weren't just like a novelty band, and this is like some of the most advanced drum programming you've ever gotten. But back then it was certainly the most complex stuff you had in that field. They had a side band called Guestcom, and that year they released 2 EPs on the Scam label, which were their own take on hip-hop, not rap. There was no rap on it, but it's extremely glitchy hip-hop with strokes, samples like being edited in a very like electro way. It is. There was nothing like that. Like when you listen to that back then, it really sounded like the future. And this came out also on the Scam label, which also had the first Bola album, which was kind of the same kind of music, but this one was more like a Bordeaux wine, rounder. When this stuff was very angular, this was much warmer, much more simple in a way. This is the Soup album, which also has this Braille sticker somewhere. Another band from that same label that released great EPs, released his first album on Planet Mu, Jega. He was an architect, as you can his music sounds like the music from an architect, and this is closer to Otaker, but still kind of really punchy with hooks rather than being too abstract. This is great music. That is probably like a time capsule from back then, and something that was still being kind of like a crossover with the old world of indie, Global Communication, which is one of the 2-3 main British techno acts from back then, doing a whole album of remixes of Chapter House, which was like an indie shoegaze band. So, and basically turning them like into something that almost sounds like Seafeel. But it's like the natural evolution of indie rock from the UK from back then. And this is a fantastic album. It was very rare and expensive, but it got reissued a few years ago, so now you can find it for a decent price. And lastly, a record that was very influential for me, which is Theo Parrish on his own label, Sound Signature. This is American. This is when house also started to become more intellectual in a way. This is still club music and very efficient one, but more angular also. And this is more coming from a black music perspective than all the stuff from before. This is the number 4 on his label, Sound Signature. The 3 before that are good, but this is really the one when he starts to find something that is so unique that it's still influential right now, and he's still working from the same perspective as this Theo Parrish.
Thanks. See you. Yeah, that's a good one. Theo Parrish, man. I've got some of his stuff. I got like a 2011 one I would show, but I don't have that one. But that's kind of an obscure label to follow. Detroit label, right?
No, that's a cult label. That's like
cult. Yeah, exactly.
This is highly collectible, and he's impressed them many times now.
Like if Richard went into Gramophone, he could find some of that, but I mean, you wouldn't find Sound Signature, Theo Parrish any day, any old day kind of thing.
Oh,
maybe a CD. Did he ever do a CD? I don't think.
Interesting. Well, I have been spending too much money on records recently, so it's going to be a while before I go to Gramophone again. That place is not cheap.
Yeah, and it's just so many records.
What's the name of the guy who runs the shop?
I'm sorry?
Do you know the name of the guy who runs the shop?
No, he's
a bunch of people know.
He's younger than I am. He's a big bear kind of guy.
Exactly.
Yeah, but he's younger than me, so he's probably in his 50s.
Yeah. He's a really good seller on Discogs, and he knows Chicago house in and out. Gramophone is the only shop that's still around that has still a connection with the original stuff and what is going on now.
Oh yeah, it's an amazing store, and he's got so much stuff in there that I have no idea what some of it is. But the cool thing is, at least with the open records, he's got 4 or 5 listening stations.
The listening stations, they're awesome.
So you can go and listen to the stuff, and
that's definitely an afternoon. You want to go there, spend the afternoon. Digging.
Yes,
it's
for
sure.
Time.
But you will really want to have a budget and to ask him for the stuff behind the counter, because in the shop, he doesn't have the.
Well, I always ask him whenever I'm in there. I always tell him I'm looking for stuff. In fact, he didn't know that there was a appeal session of Sid Barrett, and he started looking it up, and I could see his mind working. Mm-hmm. He was going, So, anyway, Jorgen.
You should ask him Does he have stuff on this label?
Missing records.
Missing records. This is
I
Marcus.
don't know. I don't know.
Is it from the
Ask
80s?
him- if you ask him about
Missing records.
Marcus Mix, that will show. You will show him that you like.
It will show that you know Stunty.
No. But you know, you
Different questions for that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he was very helpful the first time I went in there, and I started saying, I said, I want to show me your Chicago classic house, and so that's when I picked up a couple things. He showed me that, and also the Detroit house. Although I didn't realize that Terrence, what's his name, was a Chicago DJ because it was on the Asylum Records label, which is a Detroit. Anyway, Jorgen, bring
us back to
yourself
Sweden.
home. What do you got for us?
I got a little stack of this and that.
Bye, guys. I have to go. Sorry, it's bad fashion,
Okay,
bad manner.
see you, Stunty.
See you.
Yes, thanks
you,
for
Stunty.
joining us, Stunty. We shall see you another time.
Yeah. Bye.
A little this and that. We have A Simple Minds.
Yes.
Minneapolis. I'm not definitely going to say that this is their best album, but it is a really good album. It is classic Simple Minds, so still it is worth listening to, even though it's not New World Dream or Once Upon a Time or something like that, but still a good one. Seal, Human Being.
Oh yeah.
Some really cool stuff.
What's the hit on that one? Is there a song?
It is a long time since I listened to it. To be honest, I'm not sure what is the hit single of it, but
I saw him live too at a festival.
I'm not sure.
A whole lot of women, a whole lot of moms out to see Seal. What a voice! What a voice!
I got a couple of Swedish stuff here. This is a band that back then, again, I didn't like, but then I heard the first single of this album, and it knocked me down my feet that this was so funky and great. It is a band whose main figure are celebrities in Sweden. Both are media personalities, and today one of them is a well-known stand-up comedian in Sweden. I'm talking about Whale, and they do some kind of little noisy experimental dance music. This is the album All Disco Must End in Broken Bones, and I fell in love with the song Four Big Speakers. That was a pretty good summer hit this year.
Never heard of them.
So the main figures are a TV show presenter, former TV show presenter, I should say, Kia Berg, and stand-up comedian Henrik Schyffert. And a band that I should have shown last week, but I forgot it. But what do you do when an album comes out in 1997? You take the reissue, and it was released in USA in an English version in '98. So I take the English version of Kent's album Isola.
Huh.
And Kent is a band that a little depressive, very strange lyrics, but very mysterious and little darks in indie pop in Swedish. And I'm not going to say that this is my favorite album by them, but it's definitely a whole better album that I thought back then.
Have you listened to both the Swedish and the English versions?
Yes, I have them both.
So how do they compare in terms of, because sometimes, lyrical content gets lost in the translation.
Musically, it sounds exactly the same. Lyric-wise, when it comes to Kent, I like Kent very much, but when it comes to the lyrics, I don't understand the lyrics because they're very too deep for me normally. So,
Okay.
but I don't think that it is just as deep in English as it is in Swedish. Naturally,
Okay.
they played in some American clubs or so, but they never got as big and outside of Sweden as in Sweden, because in Sweden they're counted as one of the biggest selling Swedish bands ever.
The reason I asked is because 99 Luft Balloons, when the record company made them do an English version of the song, it really kind of botched the whole, in the translation, the whole sentiment of the song, and the band really hated having to do that. But anyway, sorry.
Well, I think that it works both ways, actually. But it helps if you don't understand the lyrics normally, so then you can't care.
Yeah.
We have some. I have some dance music from the '98. Culture Beat. I've mentioned them before.
Still going. Okay.
Yeah, I have Culture Beat, but not Metamorphosis. My
got
Culture
Mr.
Beat was
Vane.
from earlier.
Yeah, Mr. Vane.
But this is a whole different Culture Beat, because it's they have switched members. They don't have a rapper anymore. They just have, and they have another singer also. And it's not the typical Eurodance. Normally, when a Eurodance project try to do something new, we walk away from the Eurodance. It sounds pretty bad, because it sounds so desperate, so uninteresting. But in this case, they managed to do some kind of a dance with a lot of soul in it, and it works really well, surprisingly well. A surprisingly really great Culture Beat album that sounds nothing like Mr. Vane, but it's still really, really good.
Mr. Vane, yes, my favorite.
A
Not
cheese
my
classic.
Sash, Belgian project, fronted by Sasha Leppesen, and it's called some kind of Eurotrance. Life Goes On is his second album, and really, really nice atmospheric Eurotrance style. And '98 was the year when I went into a genre that unfortunately didn't last too long, but it was so great, and it was a big beat that I started to fall in love with. Much to Fatboy Slim, You Come a Long Way, Baby. That it's like a playhouse in the studio. You're taking a sample from here and there and there and put it together in something really funny and really, really put a great beat on it. And here is his single Rockefeller Skunk. And my usual soul section. George Benson, more classic soul. George Benson released a fantastic soul album called Standing Together. That doesn't sound 90s at all, but it sounds timeless, really great soul. And Brandy, more modern soul, Never Say Never. Definitely containing her single with Monica, The Boy Is Mine. And this is actually really nice, soothing, and relaxing, jamming 90s soul.
I completely forgot about Brandy.
Closest to hip hop that you will find in my collection.
That album is a classic, man. I listen to that all year long. I don't have that on vinyl, so I wouldn't be able to show it, but that is a really good R&B track. Album.
Yeah, it's definitely good. And I can also show Ace of Base.
I remember that.
The Flowers, their third album, not as bad as everybody says. It's not as good as the two first one, but it's actually a good album.
They had a couple. There had a couple dance hits that they were playing in the clubs I was going to, and but I never bought anything of theirs.
My 1998.
I danced to it though. There was some good dance stuff coming out then.
I just realized I forgot to bring one. I don't know if it was shown earlier, but probably one of the biggest albums of the year, Lauryn Hill, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Did anyone show it?
Yeah, no one showed it.
Whoa, what a killer album for R&B again.
Yeah.
Lived on
I
it.
never understood Lauryn Hill.
Thanks.
Any others to close us out here for today's show?
No, I think I might make a video later. I've got to dig a couple more records out of my storage locker,
Yeah.
I think, from 98.
All right. Thank you guys for
Thanks,
joining
Richard.
next year.
Next
Still got a
week.
couple episodes before it's next year, but it'll be 1999. I'll have to look up and see if I've got much from 1999. I'm kind of guessing I don't. Not until the 2000s will I start having more. But anyway, thank you again, everybody.
Are you two guys? Are you guys going to be making like a best of 2022? Are you guys working on that? Video?
I don't have a lot of brand new releases.
Yeah, it's a
You
lot of
know,
reissues and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's what I usually do for my end of year video is I just revisit what are my highest priced records according to Discogs.
Okay. That's your
when it,
tradition.
when it comes to me, and I don't buy, I buy only thrift store stuff, so I don't have any new music from 2022. My year in review normally is my showing my 10 best findings of the year.
Well, I have some new stuff. It'll be techno, big surprise, and probably some death metal.
As I am not as big on
Those genres.
new music today as I was back then.
Right. Fair enough.
Yeah, I think the most recent record that I have, well, I think I got something that was released this year, but like my Aesop Rocks Malibu Ken, that's 2019, so that's probably one of the most recent releases that I have, and which is absolutely stunning, amazing.
My most recent is the latest from Churches that came last year, but I
This
got
one
that.
I think might be 2022.
What's
I
that?
just picked this up recently. This is a Japanese band
Okay.
called what the hell are they called? I just bought it because of the cover.
Sure.
And,
Cool cover.
and I did some reading about them, and I'm going to make a video about this record. But they were inspired by Frank Zappa, and they definitely have a Frank Zappa sound to them.
I will probably show CDs as well as vinyl for the current year.
I got British new wave bands Churches album that came out last year. That's my most recent, but I got that for free that's a VCLT. So
Yeah.
I just got a new CD yesterday, new Megadeth. So good album. A lot of good riffs, killer riffs, man, on there. You want melody, riffage.
Yeah,
if I
what
was
melody
melody,
was
I'd rather go to Aqua than
Well, keep
Aqua
you awake.
Megadeth.
You can't fall asleep listening to Megadeth. That's for sure.
No, okay, I give you that. If that is the only reason, I can give you that. It's good for insomnia.
All right. Well,
Good
thanks
chat
again,
with you guys.
for joining us, and everyone out there for watching. And as I always say, please remember to pray for the people inside your head, for they won't be there when you're dead.
Peace out.